And good evening. Welcome to another edition of Coach's Corner here on the Highlander Activity Network live on YouTube tonight on this Wednesday night, our first Wednesday in November. And again, we're going to start off talking football just like we did last week, wrapping up the junior high season. And unfortunately, we'll be wrapping up the varsity season a little later on with Coach Scott Rourke. And coming up in the second half of the show tonight, the three-class system, which I know this gentleman sitting to my right is got his eye firmly on with the possibility of a three-class system in North Dakota, as Josh Johnson, superintendent of Valley City Public Schools, will be joining us here in the second half of the show. But Jimmy Howard joining us. How you doing?
Good.
Well, we won't talk basketball quite yet because you still got some time. You're between seasons now.
Yeah, a little downtime with the family, but getting ready to gear up and excited for that season to come. But yeah, about 3 weeks out.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight and talking football. Of course, for junior high football, the 7th and 8th graders. And you, along with Preston Myers, worked with the 8th grade team and got to see a handful of games this year. And just your thoughts on this 8th grade squad you had this year.
Numbers were low, but we did have 11 kids out that came to work, practice every day, working hard, and when you only have 11, you got to be in pretty good shape. And so early in the season, we ran into some conditioning issues, and I think the kids started to figure it out. But it was a fun group of kids to work with. There's some really good talent in there. All 11 kids, I hope, stick it out because I think they'll really help the program. They can all contribute in some point down the field or down the road here, and yeah, there were some games where it was like, oh my goodness, but there were also some games where you were like, yep, like they got it figured out here. So much like most junior high sports, you go up and down, and it's still an exciting season.
I know you got you look at this year, one game that just stands out. I think it was against Milner. A kid by the name of Brock Johnson, 8th grader for Milner, running back. Pretty talented kid. I think it was 7th or 8th grade, but it was was Kindred. I'm sorry, Kindred.
Yep.
Yes, Kindred, because I had texted the Kindred track coach, Jason Almaris, and I said, I think I'm on your next sprinting champ. But yeah, Brock Johnson for Kindred. But that's the kind of football those kids got to see, kids that are that talented at that age, right?
Yep, and it's good for them to see that as well, because you don't always want to be, if you're just blowing everybody out and that you're not seeing that competition at least once during the season or somewhere in there, they can start to think, I don't want to say necessarily think they're better than they are, but you want them to be challenged somewhere in the season so that you can have growth. And, we did have a lot of challenges this season. We did have a spurt there where we won quite a few games, and we were playing really good football. And then, Kindred state champs last year. They got a really good varsity program going. That kid was maybe the best running back I've seen in junior high football in a long time, and it was a wake up call. Like, hey, we still got work to do, and but no, I think it was good for them to see that. Hats off to Kindred and what they have going there, and yeah, that kid's the real deal.
he was pretty good. Let's talk about Highlanders. Enough about other teams, other kids on other teams. But for you guys, Hunter Undum, Andrew Sikora, Finn Doctor, quarterback, offensively, do you guys run similar to what the varsity runs? A kind of a similar type offense?
Yeah, we meet with Scott every year and talk about what they're doing, and we try to mimic some of the basics at least. So when we have kids going up as freshmen, it's not a whole brand new system to them. We throw in some wrinkle plays here and there and some fun things, but we really try to stay consistent with what they're running. We try to use some of the same terminology just to make that transition easier for those freshmen. And not only that, but it makes it easier for them to start as freshmen with the coaches as well. They've heard some of that terminology. They can kind of get going on the run there, and we run the same thing, so we run into some of the same issues you might see on Friday night in some situations, and we don't have nearly the amount of plays to be able to get out of some stuff. So, we had 3 running backs that were all pretty good, some hard workers, and Finn at quarterback, he did a really good job leading the team from that position.
And you had some 7th graders that maybe came on and helped you out a little bit. You talked about the numbers thing, so you still need that help from the 7th graders.
Yeah, Parker Rolfsema, Chase Coughlin, Owen Hunt. Um, I know I'm missing a few other kids that had stepped in places to help. But those are kind of the main kids that helped quite a bit. Oh, Adam Shenenko helped quite a bit. And then we tried to get other kids that stuck around in there for some reps. Just to, you stayed, you were suited up, ready to go. But with the only 11 kids, if we had anyone hurt or sick that day, we had a sub kids in there. So those kids also got some experience there at that 8th grade level. So they kind of know what to expect next year. So in that aspect, that was kind of nice.
Speaking of expecting next year, looking at the junior varsity team, so those 9th graders that you had last year's 8th graders, do you kind of stand there and watch those guys go, these, almost like a proud papa watching how these kids and how well they played when they got at that junior varsity level?
A little bit, I told my wife this year I felt more invested in the varsity group going through at games and stuff, just because you've coached those kids. You may not have the same relationship with them that you did when you were coaching, but I still respect, I hope they respect what we are doing, but I really respect what they've been doing. And we always talk, we're like, if this group can stay together, if these kids stay out, they could be really successful at the varsity level. And you're seeing that, those kids staying out and the success that they did have. And so, there's a little bit of like, I know all these kids out here. I've been coaching them when they were in junior high, and you felt a little bit more pride than maybe just the average fan. Just because you've been with them in the trenches when they were in junior high, and it's great to see them grow, not only physically and mentally, but just in the game of football. And I'm really excited. I know that they didn't finish the way they wanted to this year, but I'm really excited to see more of those kids stepping in next year as well.
Final question for you. We talk about the 7th graders. We won't assume anything because we know what happens. Let's say you're coaching the 8th graders next year. Looking at the 7th graders you saw this year, well, is your wheels returning like, okay, I got some kids coming up that can help this,
Yeah, you see that. The crazy thing is, from 6th grade to 7th grade, you don't always see a lot of physical maturation, but you definitely see from 7th to 8th grade. And even some of those kids that, maybe they didn't make a lot of plays this year, they weren't big impact kids in the 7th grade, sometimes become big impact kids in 8th grade or 9th grade as they develop and mature. And so I'm also looking forward to seeing where some of those kids develop physically. But yeah, you see who's got some talent in some places, and you're like, all right, need to figure out how to make sure they get the ball in some of these situations, or we can do this defensively because we have this kid. And so yeah, there's a little bit, but you never know how they'll develop in between 7th and 8th grade. Right. So also really looking forward to seeing what develops, and and new kids that may move into the district, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, we got another lineman, or we have the skill position that we didn't have last year. So maybe we can talk some more kids to coming out. I don't know, but it's exciting to see those 7th graders come up, and then it's always exciting. It's sad to see, when the season's done, to see them go, because they're not going to work with those kids again. But very excited to see what they're doing in their junior varsity and varsity careers as well.
All right. Well, Jimmy, I appreciate you stopping by again tonight, and look forward to talking hoops here as we get started after the 1st of December.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it.
And go Highliners.
There you go. Coach Jimmy Howard from the Highliner 8th grade football. We'll be back, and we're going to be talking with Brandon Myers, one of the 7th grade coaches. That's on the way next as Coach's Corner continues on the Highliner Activity Network. Back here on Coach's Corner on this Wednesday evening and continuing the wrap-up of the football season. We just got in talking with Jimmy Howard, 8th grade coach, now joined by Brandon Myers, along with Tom Milbrandt, coach of the 7th graders. Coach, how you doing?
Doing all right. How about yourself?
Well, you know, we got to spend a lot of Friday nights together up in the press box and never a chance to sit and talk football. No, not like we didn't when we were up there. But, well, let's talk about those 7th graders. And we just mentioned Jimmy had 11 8th graders, but you had a good number, it looked like, for 7th grade.
Yeah, we had a lot of kids out this year. It's all Thunder kids.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And that was one thing we had Thunder on last week, you know, the move from 6th grade to 7th grade. Is this about the age, you think, Brandon, the kids are going to decide if they want to stick it out or not?
A little bit, yeah. It was like last year, too. You can see the groups they had for Thunder that year, that none of them came out. But then all of a sudden, one year, they decided to come out. Right. So I think it's more of a decision-making for them.
Mm-hmm. It's if they want to play football or don't, if they want to do something else in the fall. But now let's talk about some of those kids. I know I've got a couple right off the top of my head that really look sharp. You know, Parker Rolsma, Leighton Hendrickson had a great season.
Yep. Yeah,
he did. And then Hudson Creel was a quarterback. Chase Conklin also. Of course, I'm talking on the offensive, but these kids played both ways.
Yep.
And your defense was pretty salty too this year.
Oh yeah, I mean we got some kids that never played before. And we had one that finally got his first sack and tackle. He was happy about it. So, yeah, it was pretty good.
And then when you get something like Owen Hunt, that's a 7th grader, that takes up 3 spots in the front line. And your kicker.
Yeah.
You don't probably see that very often in 7th and 8th grade where you got a kicker, as Owen did the kickoffs for him as well. But he was a beast in there defensively.
Oh, yeah. He's a pretty good football player. I mean, he's going to probably be solid for varsity when he gets up there.
When he rolls through, he already is about the same size as Dylan, so it's going to get interesting.
He's almost tall as me.
Well, that's good. That's good. Keep growing there. Keep growing. But now, just your thoughts on the season overall. You know, forgetting the wins and losses.
Yeah. Just
where these kids came from when you got together in August until you played that last game.
I think coming from August, they were nervous because it's the first time here.
Yep.
And then they pretty much improved from the first day of practice towards the last game of the year. Mm-hmm. It's an exciting group. I like the kids.
Tom Milbrandt, as I mentioned, who works with you on the 7th graders. So you guys are the brainchild of the 7th graders. And when we talk about the kids from 7th grade that go up and help the 8th graders, is it something where Jimmy says, well, I need this position, I need this position? Is that kind of is there a conversation?
Yeah, somewhat.
Or do you say, hey, this kid's pretty good, he could play up?
Something like that, but we actually asked all the kids just to stay, just in case if somebody gets hurt, maybe we can put them in.
Right.
And like Jimmy said, it's to get them reps.
Yeah.
So they know what they expect for next year.
Because if you get that big lead and you want to start resting some of the regulars, if you will, let them get in there and get a few. And I even saw some of those guys we just mentioned, in Parker and Leighton, that going up against 8th grade kids did very well.
Oh yeah, they did. Parker's a pretty good athlete, and he's a hockey player. So So yeah, we didn't have him for I think the first 2 weeks because he was in a concussion protocol type thing.
Yeah.
But after he was done, all wheels.
And good speed.
Oh, yes.
Very good speed once he got to the corner.
Oh, yeah.
Leighton seemed to be one of those guys that just went up the middle and knocked people over, and then Parker liked to get to the outside and do it that way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Leighton could be a really good player in the future here.
He came up to me the other day. We were here for a volleyball, and he came up to me, and I remember talking to him last year as a Thunder player. He said, so you're ready to be a Highlander, get up there and play something? Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be fun. And then watching this year, I said, hey, he had a great year, number 28. I said, keep it going. But it's nice when these kids they kind of get, if you will, a little swagger to them. Not cocky, but this is fun. I can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wait until you get to 9th and 10th grade because that's when it happens.
That's pretty much what we try to do is get them ready.
Right.
Because I'm a former Highlander football player, so I know what varsity is like.
Yeah.
So I try to get them up to speed. So
And just kind of the similar question that I asked Jimmy about his 8th graders going and playing junior varsity. Now this year, you look at some of those 8th graders you guys had last year as 7th graders. You're thinking, yeah, I saw that last year.
yeah, I'm proud of the guys that we coached. I mean, at the Friday night game, it was a little rough. I couldn't really say anything to them because I've been down that road, and I had a couple of them come and give me a hug. But
Yeah.
one of them was my cousin Scotty Rhodey, so he was a little emotional. So
And just a sophomore.
yeah, Scotty could be.
So he's going to see some numbers in the next couple of years on the varsity level. Well, again, we're kind of wrapping up the football season, and Brandon Myers, along with Tim Milbrandt, coach the 7th graders. Brandon, again, thanks for coming by, and
no problem.
Looking forward to sitting up the press box with you again next year.
For a long time, probably.
Exactly. All right. Appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Brandon Myers, again, one of the 7th grade coaches for Valley City Highlanders, back with more football talk with Coach Scott Rourke coming up. Coach's Corner on the Highlander Activity Network. Back here at Coach's Corner on this Wednesday evening, our first Coach's Corner of November. And again, sadly, we're wrapping up the football season, and now we are joined by Coach Scott Rourke from the Highlander varsity team. Coach, how you doing?
We're doing fine. I mean,
The sun came up the next day, didn't it?
You know, Art Goff, my former coach, used to say that quite a bit because we lost a few games too. Yeah, you know, it's always disappointing and humbling. And yet, I think it's sometimes it's a good reminder that there are still more important things in life than that game. And I know that we had a lot of kids that were very emotional after the game, which, you know, I think when they invest that much into it, especially the seniors, and there's all of a sudden that reality of the fact that I just played my last high school football game, you know, and sometimes that hits them harder than they think sometimes. So, yeah.
30-28 the final with Fargo North, but all in all, it was a great football game. And you knew North coming in was a very good football team, and that Peter Haugo, their running back, yes, didn't start, but he definitely made an impact.
Well, they have the flexibility. I mean, those guys have been there the last couple of years, you know, and I know they had kind of they have a way of moving like 3 guys around in their backfield, and they can play a couple different positions in most cases, and you know, they were a little bit more able to rest on some situations, I think, than because I look at the game and I just think, you know, just felt like we got worn down. And you know, our kids fought a valiant fight, and I will say that in every game that we played.
Yeah.
It just seemed like you know, we just got worn down.
Didn't you look at like Zach Sikora asked to do a little bit more, but he's a good athlete, just kind of a beast back there.
He is, you know, and I talked to Zach after the game and after the season and stuff like that, and I said, "You're worn out, weren't you?" And he said, "Yeah, I kind of felt like it." He said, "But I wasn't coming out of the game, you know." And I think he kind of exemplified a lot of the mentality that a lot of our kids had. You know, they're tired, but they tried to suck it up, and they dug deeper probably than they've ever had to dig before. And I think that can be a good thing for a lot of us to know that we can, maybe are capable more than we give ourselves credit for.
Right.
So, I give our kids all the credit in the world.
We got the postseason awards came out here, and some kids made all conference. I know Gavin was one of the nominees for Senior Athlete of the Year. You had Gavin Gerhardt, Ethan Miller, Brady Gassetti, Zach Sikora, and Broden Muskie. All conference honors for those gentlemen. And I mentioned it to someone the other day. I said, well, with Broden and Brady, they may not have the stats, but they're part of an offensive line that opened up holes for three guys and three good guys and 260 yards offense on the ground. That's something to hang your hat on.
Well, absolutely. Those guys were, no question, the focal point of our attack, and we weren't the only ones that knew it. Everybody else knew it too. But and those guys played some defense for us too. So they did a great job. Very physical young men, and all the credit in the world goes to those kids because they hunkered down and they made things happen for us.
Will Schwer, Peyton Olson, Christian Butler, and Dylan Hunt, I believe the rest of the guys on that offensive line.
Yep.
You got to give them a shout out because of what they accomplished this year as a unit.
And remember, some of these guys are first-year starters for us too. Broden's been here for a while, and so is Brady. But I think those guys grew up quite a bit. Dylan's a sophomore, and I know you're just talking about Scott Rohde, another sophomore. We had 4 sophomores starting for us this year, and so it bodes, well for us as far as having some guys coming back. Hopefully we can keep some of our freshman kids out because we've got to develop, try to do something about our depth, and I think that's one of the things that got to us towards the end, and we knew it could be critical for us, and down the stretch, injuries and depth, and well, it proved that way too. And I think maybe you forgot to mention Ethan Miller.
Yeah. That's the one I was missing. Yes.
And Ethan had a great year, and obviously most people kind of know that we missed him.
Yes.
We really missed him on both sides of the football. So, he was a warrior all year for us.
We could go off here and talk about every kid on this roster and what they did and the impact that they made on this team on this year. 7-3 record, number one for a couple of weeks. I mean, we can go on and on, but this was one of those team effort type of years, wasn't it, Coach?
Well, there was no doubt about it. I mean, we had some growing to do. We had some, kids that played a lot that had experience, but we had some that didn't. And it was, it's always a work in progress. I think every year you start over sometimes because you're not always sure. We put in a new offense. Our defense was different. So we had a bunch of different moving cogs, and you don't always know how those things are going to gel together. And I think they certainly gelled well together. And I liked how, at the end of the year we did make some adjustments. We were able to put up 4 touchdowns, 28 points in last game. And so we made some adjustments to some things that people were catching up on us on offense. We just fell a little bit short. When you lose 3 games by a total of 9 points, your kids were right there with everybody and could play with everybody. What more can I ask from the effort and the attitude that our kids played with this year? It was a great effort all the way around.
And again, congratulations to you, Class A EDC Coach of the Year. And I know you'll be the first to say, well, the guys that are up in the booth and on the sidelines that helped get that.
Well, it is. Anytime I'm one of those guys that believes that anytime one of our players or coaches earns an honor, it's an honor that we've all earned, and we all know how that works. When your team makes some improvements and wins and losses, some people take notice, but it's kids that make plays, it's coaches that make calls, it's all that stuff that comes together. So the credit goes to them, no question about it. I've been around long enough to know how that stuff works. So.
Coach Engen, Suffolk, Heck, and Smith, your assistants again this year, and what they did and how they got this team ready every week.
Yeah, I mean, they were so unselfish, all those guys, the amount of time and energy that they were willing to put in watching film. Well, that's a lot of stuff behind the scenes. People don't understand that our coaches were making themselves available for our players. But it's not just that, but it's the players buying in and being willing to, hey, I'll spend an hour here with my coach or here doing some other things and watching film. And I think people who have watched film know it makes a difference and it helps. Those that aren't so sure about that, well, I'm just going to say experience tells me otherwise. And now with online film, kids can watch film wherever they want. So it's kind of a neat little technology thing that we never had. Obviously, we never saw film of the guys we were going to play back then. You just trusted our coaches. The old days of getting in a car and driving and meeting a coach and trading film from a couple games before the one you just played or whatever. It was just a different time, and that's the way things were done. And now it's just like instant stuff. So
those old VHS tapes that are about the size of a dictionary.
Yeah, I don't know if I got any of those, but I know I had some CDs and DVDs from coaches that we traded. So yeah.
Well, Coach, again, congratulations on a great year. Yes, it's always sad to see it end, but you can still look back with smiles and a lot of great memories made by the Highlanders this year.
Well, absolutely, and I think when I look at everything as a whole, as I said, we lost 3 games, but we played some good football teams too. They've got some football players. Our kids battled. 9 points was the difference in all of that stuff, and how can I fault the effort, and the guts that our kids showed all year long, and the concern they had for their teammates, and maybe stepping outside their comfort zone, and it's just it's a great year when you look and think about all those things that they accomplished, because wonder sometimes what their goals were coming in. I know some of the guys wanted to make it state playoffs. We did, and I thought we served ourselves, our community proud with the way the kids represented themselves, and very proud of them and our coaches, and excited to see what happens for us for next year.
All right. Well, Coach, again, congratulations, and thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul.
You bet. Coach Scott Rourke joining us from the Highlander Varsity Football Team. We'll be back with more Coach's Corner here from the Hack on the Hack on the Highlander Activity Network live here on YouTube. And now we are switching gears after we've talked football and wrapped up the football season. We're going to get into basketball, and Superintendent Josh Johnson joining us. I was going to say coach, since I've been saying it all night. But Josh, how you doing there, Mr. Johnson?
I'm doing great. Thanks a lot for bringing me back on.
Yeah,
Paul, taking that risk, or giving me the opportunity, whichever you want to call it.
Right.
Come on to the show, and love to talk about activities and the great things that are happening, and maybe jump in a little 3-class conversation as well, huh?
We might do that down the road here, but it's almost like you're promoting a movie. You're getting on all the talk shows around North Dakota, but you're doing it for a great reason. Try to help promote this 3-class proposal.
Hey, Paul, it's all about the kids, and following up Coach Rourke, again, a shout-out goes out to our football team, to our student athletes. They had an outstanding season. I think everybody agrees it didn't end the way that we wanted it to end. We all had hopes of following them over to the Dome and watching the state championship game, but again, nothing for the kids, Coach Rourke, our coaches, staff that put so much time in during the season, so we're extremely proud of them.
Well, I know that football, varsity and junior varsity combined was 14-4-1.
Yep.
That's pretty good.
That's darn good. Yeah, a lot to be proud of again. So, three-class plan.
Right. That's why the last time you were on, we were in the groundworks when you were on in the spring of what was going on with it, but a lot of headway here in the last several months.
Yeah, so let's take people back again just real quick to where this all did get started. We sent a survey out last January and asked the member schools, is this something that you'd be interested in exploring? And 85% of schools responded back and said, yes, it is. March, we created a focus group. We had regional representatives, ADs, superintendents, principals, coaches from 10 different regions, the 8 regions in Class B, the 2 regions, EDC, WDA, and then 2 advisors. We had representation from small schools, mid-sized schools like Valley City, to the big schools, West Fargo, representatives as well. And so that group really started in earnest, looking at and identifying what the needs were, the priorities, which we quickly honed in on addressing competitive balance, addressing student participation, and then finally, and then this was an addition, was maintaining or increasing the number of teams competing in boys and girls basketball in North Dakota. And so that group, March, April, May, did quite a bit of work, came together in June and started putting together what an actual plan would look like. And some of the specific pieces of that were, where should the cut line be? And that was a big question, right. is who's in the middle class, who's in Class B, who's in the double A. And so we moved some things around there. That led us to August. We sent out a plan, and I think what has helped rally support and get schools behind this proposal, and maybe different than what's been done in the past, is the level of engagement, the opportunities for comment, for feedback, stakeholder input, in addition to the representatives representing their regions, their schools, their towns, anything else. And so from August to end of September, when we put out the plan and offered up that opportunity for comment, there was a lot of great feedback that we received from why was the cut line set at 170 between B and the middle class. And we looked at taking a school size of Oaks or Park River, Velva, who was initially in that middle class, and said, yeah, it just doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like an Oaks is a class A or a middle-sized school.
Right.
And so we ended up adjusting that to 180. In the end, we included Watford City, Turtle Mountain, Devil's Lake. Those were schools initially that weren't included in the middle class. They joined Wahpeton and Valley City as current Class A schools. And so I think that was just a very interesting process that allowed us to gain a lot of momentum, if you will, with the feedback that we were receiving. And then when we hit October, we put out a final draft of the plan. Following the NDHSA procedure, we needed 60% support from our member schools. And so it's been a journey, Paul, over the last 3 or 4 weeks leading up to November 1st, which was earlier this week. And we were able to accomplish that 60% support. A majority of the 80.5 member schools that supported this proposal came from that Class B level. And I'd tell you that for them, it came back to competitive balance. And I know that there's been quite a bit of discussion regarding the imbalance, if you will, between a private school, a metro or urban school such as a Thompson or a Kindred or a Castleton. what really became polarizing when you start looking at some comparisons and enrollment sizes between Lakota and North Dakota, with a high school enrollment of about 60 students, comparing that and considering that they're in the same division as a Central Cass that has over 300. You know, you're talking about almost a 7-to-1 ratio with that, and so not surprising. Again, the Class B schools jumped on board with that, but then much credit goes out to the Kindreds, the Castletons, the Rugbys, that in that middle class that did jump on board, and they saw the work that was put into that, the need to be able to balance out, and the trust as well in the focus group to recognize that this really does bring about a pretty doggone exciting division of basketball. And you know, I can't help but think of what does a state tournament of 8 schools in that middle class look like when you're considering a Central Cass, a Kindred, a Rugby, a Bottineau, a Shiloh, Bishop Ryan, Valley City, Turtle Mountain, you know, both at the regional level as well as the state level. You could have some really doggone exciting hoops going on in the state of North Dakota during the month of March. And I think some of the feedback that we've had, again, is, and Dom Izzo has made the remarks relative to it, is he said, I can almost count and tell you who's going to be in the Class B tournament on a year-to-year, because you get the same schools over and over that are representing. And so let's look forward and say, Class B, who's going to be representing in these regions where historically it's been dominated by Oak Grove, Kindred, and Castleton? Well, it's pretty exciting to think about some new faces representing a region, showing up to a state tournament for the first time, and those new experiences for kids. And so adding a whole nother state tournament for an entire division allows 16 additional teams, that many more kids to have that state tournament experience. And anyone that wants to argue that we're watering it down, I vehemently disagree with that idea. That I think you're going to have some extremely competitive basketball, and there's going to be a lot of energy and enthusiasm that's going to be brought back with us.
And South Dakota's made it work. I worked there for 9 months through a basketball season. I know exactly how it works there, and it works great.
Yeah, and that's the third priority that we looked at, is the number of teams. And so when you look comparatively, North Dakota, South Dakota have a lot of similarities and approximately the same number of students, and yet South Dakota has, I think it's 38 more teams competing in their 3 divisions of basketball. And so in North Dakota, what's happened, Paul, is in Class B communities, let's use Region 1 as an example. You got Sargent County. And so in order for a Milner, Sargent Central, or a North Sargent to be able to compete with Kindred or Castleton, they've had to join forces. And so you go from 3 teams to 1 team. And now all of a sudden, you know, those opportunities for kids that don't want to jump on a bus and go practice 20 miles, 15, 20, 25 miles repeatedly night after night, not just for competition. And so that's what we've seen that trend occur, and that's why I think our number of teams have been on the decline. As far as student participation across the board over the last 20 years, in girls basketball, student participation has dropped 40%. In boys basketball, the participation rate has dropped 32%. And so that's significant. That's a total number of students, fewer students that are experiencing an activity, finding purpose in what they're doing, not only from a health standpoint, but being part of a team, something bigger than themselves, having school pride associated with it. We know that grades are better, behaviors are better, attitudes are better, mental health. And so that's all the reason, again, why the focus group brought about increasing participation as one of the priorities.
Having the schools a chance to voice their opinion in the spring and say, well, like you said, someone say, well, why was 170 cut up? But actually being able to voice their opinion, how big was that in this process? Because sometimes redistricting just happens and they have to deal with it. But having a chance to voice their opinion and say, well, I don't like it, I do like it, how big of that was in this process?
We heard grassroots. If you're going to go about and you're going to propose, this is going to have to be a grassroots effort. 59 years, Paul. This current 2-division plan has been in place since 1963. And so there's been a lot of proposals that have been made, some on napkins, some on a piece of paper, but over the years, a lot of proposals have been brought forth to the Activity Association. Credit to the board members of the Activity Association for putting the procedure in place, because what it did is force the focus group in this particular proposal to really engage with the stakeholders and the member schools. And again, that went beyond just simply having conversation with superintendents from 150 school districts. We talked to board members, we talked to coaches, we talked to referees, officials. There was parents engaged and active in the communication conversation. And again, this plan was not perfect. A perfect plan gets 100% support, but we believe it's better. It provides more opportunities. It's going to bring about balance. It's going to maintain or increase the number of teams. And so at the end of the day, I think the member schools stood in support of that. Right now, the number that we ended with when we hand delivered the proposal over to the Activity Association on November 1st, we had 80.5 schools out of 124. So that was approximately 65% of schools with a basketball team were in support of it. But that doesn't include those co-op schools. So my reference back to the Milner, North Sargent,
Right.
Sargent Central. And so with that, we had over 114 schools, 74% of member schools that were in support of that. So that's almost 3 out of 4 that were in support of this proposal.
You mentioned you hand-delivered it to the high school league yesterday. Is there a plan in December to meet at their meeting in December and make a formal proposal?
Yep, there is, and you know, the focus group has made that request, and again, the proposal is for implementation in the 23-24 year. So we know time is of the essence. What we don't want to have happen is we don't want to take away from the upcoming Dakota Bowl next Friday. We don't want to take away from the state volleyball tournament the next week. And so the board is going to meet regular scheduled meeting at the beginning of December. And we're waiting on confirmation that the focus group is going to have that opportunity to be able to present this proposal at that meeting. But again, appreciate the feedback we got from the association saying, hey, let's hold off. Let's not let this be a dominating conversation until we get through these fall activities, and then let this be, you know, something that can be presented and focus at that December meeting.
Any thought, or was this a concern that you heard from any school saying, okay, you mentioned Sargent County, saying, okay, is that co-op going to be dissolved if this goes through? Now, is it going to be the cadets again for Sargent Central, for North Sargent, the Bobcats, and for Milner? Is that something you heard at all?
Yeah, I think one thing that's going to have to be worked out in the shake of this is Griggs County, Mid-Coda, Kensel is in a co-op right now, and I know Griggs County has some interest in bringing back and creating the Cougar team.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yep.
And so where does that leave Mid-Coda and Kensel? And so I think there's going to have to be enough time for those conversations to be able to play out.
Sure.
That's call it an unintended consequence, but the last thing that we want to see happen is students are left out in Binford or Glenfield without that opportunity to be able to participate, and now they're traveling ungodly miles in order to be able to find. And so again, those are going to be some of the conversations, discussions that the Activity Association is going to need to have, and some of the feedback that again we've heard. But I'm confident with where we've established the lines that there's going to be less of that and more encouragement for a Mid-Coda Kensel to say, hey, now that you're playing against schools of similar size, is this an opportunity to survey, to poll your students to find out if they're interested now in coming out and participating in basketball, and you know, spending less time on the road and having more school pride in their individual school versus being in a 4 or 5 school co-op.
Right, exactly, and that's what you hope, and that's the reason for this is to get that. I guess the next question is, have you heard anything, and I'm guessing not, from the high school league as far as just their thoughts? anything from them, or are they saying no, we're going to wait till December and then we'll voice?
Yeah, so the procedure that was put in place was followed. The feedback we got, again, it was met the requirements that were put in place, and again, part of that was the proposal had to include some historical numbers, had to include some references back to the postseason, had to have the regions represented into that as well, and so I think the expectation of the focus group is anticipating the presentation, the official formal presentation to the board of directors. There's 11 directors, and so I anticipate that it's an opportunity for them to hear it formally from the focus group. And I think there's going to be questions that they're going to have relative to that. There's a couple pieces of that. When you look at the procedures, there needs to be a finance study. The impact of adding a division is going to potentially increase some of those costs. There's going to be opportunity for revenue, of course, but how that's going to impact the association, and the association gets a lot of its revenue from the member schools. So, that's a trickle-down effect. And then from a staffing standpoint as well, a study needs to be done. And so I don't anticipate that a decision will be made in December, but looking for some feedback, questions, and next steps in terms of where the focus group goes from here, and where the association goes, and again, whether that leads into ultimately approving of a 3-class plan. If that's implemented for the 23-24, if that's implemented for 24-25, again, that's time will tell, and there's some important decisions that are forthcoming.
And I know for facilities fact, there's plenty of facilities in the state, great facilities, basketball facilities in the state to have to spread out, and everybody gets a great venue to play in this state tournament.
Yeah, Paul, I hope people, basketball enthusiasts, fans, coaches, athletes alike, media, are thinking about that. What does a Class B tournament look like?
Yeah.
I can't help but consider and think about the tournaments back from maybe the 50s or 60s, when you had some more of those small schools that were really battling it out for a district tournament championship or a region tournament. And that's some of the feedback that we had is some of the older old timers, reminiscing, if you will, the days before we had more of these urban schools or larger private schools per se that were dominating that Class B scenery. And so again, I hope that's where people's minds and attitudes are going, is the opportunities that do exist going forward. And again, I don't want people to forget at the center of this is what's in the best interest of the kids. And truly believe when we look back to the priorities, Paul, you consider the competitive balance, and I think competitive balance ties directly into student participation. And when we can look statistically and say 40% reduction in participation in girls, 32 in boys, something's got to be done. And so if this is an opportunity to be able to correct that and change the trajectory relative to that, it's good for kids.
For every 12 kids on the boys' side, 4 aren't playing. Going with those percentages, and we don't like to see that. We like participation is the backbone of high school athletics, period.
And we're not immune to that, as you know, here in Valley City as well. Our boys' numbers are stronger than our girls' numbers, but last year I think we had 12, 13 girls, grades 9 through 12, that were competing. And to be frank with you, I don't blame them at the same point. When Fargo Davies or Cheyenne or Shanley's beat us by 50 points night in, night out, I don't know how much fun that is, Paul.
No, it wouldn't be.
And that's on both sides.
Exactly.
I don't think Fargo Davies or Cheyenne wants to come over here and beat us by 50 points. It's not good for them. It's not good for us. And so bring about competitive balance, and I think there's going to be more interest from our kids.
Well, more to come in December.
Yeah, absolutely.
After that meeting, we'll see where we're at in December. Of course, the first game I think is December 3rd, so we're not too far away from the basketball season starting here with the Highliners, and it's going to be it's just a fun process. You and Mitch Carlson, the superintendent Don Lamore, who's also the girls' coach for Lamore Litchfield Marion, have kind of been working on this, and it's been a great process. And I think bottom line is, I think a lot of people, what I'm hearing is it's time.
Yeah.
It's time is what we're hearing from a lot of people something needs to be done.
Yeah, and I don't know 10 years ago if we would have had the same response as
Right.
what we have today.
Yep.
You know, the populations, the enrollments of the schools across the landscape of North Dakota are changing.
Yep.
And it's time to make the adjustments necessary, and of course, in you know, the participation is a piece of that. But I think people are excited about what the future holds.
The Hoopster magazine's too thin. We got to get it thicker, get more teams in it.
Yeah, darn right, exactly, right. More names listed,
More names
more
listed.
schools represented, and so, yeah. Shout out to you know, the upcoming. We're concluding fall season here. Volleyball is going to be
Yeah.
finishing up this week. That'll put a wrap on the fall. But shout out again. Excited about the upcoming basketball season and Coach Ty Terry
Yeah.
era, if you will,
Yeah.
in boys basketball here in Valley City. He's creating quite a buzz, generating a lot of excitement with students, and I think his numbers are representing that. Excited to see kids on the court and putting time in, working hard, and
Getting
so,
the red back in the uniforms, too.
Yeah, right, exactly. Again, just that's like you said, back again, right?
Yep.
Because you know, the red was part of the history and an accent color, and so bringing that back into the school district has been a lot of fun.
What's the old saying? Everything old is new again.
There you go. Yes, yeah.
All right. Well, again, Mr. Johnson, appreciate you joining us tonight, and look forward to having you on in December after that big meeting with the High School Activity Association, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Paul, a lot. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you much. That is Superintendent Josh Johnson. That's going to wrap things up. We'll be back and actually wrap up Coach's Corner and tell you what's coming up on Coach's Corner, or coming up on our high school Highlander Activity Network in the coming days. We'll do that coming up here on the Highlander Activity Network. Back here on Coach's Corner on the Highlander Activity Network live here on YouTube. And, of course, as Mr. Johnson said, we're near wrapping up the fall sports season and the fall season in general. And I know the second quarter started on Monday for school. But we do have something coming up here on the Highlander Activity Network on Thursday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It'll be the Jefferson Music Program. It'll be coming up Tuesday, 2 o'clock. And you can see that right here on the Highlander Activity Network. And that'll be our next event that we'll have. We'll have Coach's Corner again next week, and we got more stuff coming up as the junior high basketball. They're already starting practices, so that will be coming up here in a couple of weeks. And so a lot going on once we get into the winter sports seasons, which usually start right after Thanksgiving in the first week of December. But every Wednesday night, we'll be right here on Coach's Corner. And I want to thank our guests in tonight, Brandon Myers, Jimmy Howard, Scott Rorick, and, of course, the superintendent, Mr. Josh Johnson, joining us on tonight's program. And, again, my thanks to Jaden Johnson, our cameraman and technical director, and, as usual, our sponsors, Essentia Health and the Valley City Booster Club, for their help in getting this Highlander Activity Network up and running last year and our second season and going strong. So we do appreciate you watching us as well. And again, just go to YouTube to watch us live and search Highlander Activities or Highlander Activity Network, and you can watch live events on YouTube for the Highlander Activity Network. Until next week, 6 o'clock, again, Coach's Corner right here on the Highlander Activity Network.